disappointed in the veto that's taken place by a gentleman on the second floor. With that being the case, and having first heard about some concerns on the transportation side of things a couple of days back, we began looking at what are our alternatives on this. So one alternative would be to push forward and to override the veto. Another alternative would be to try to get some other bill that we could get through and have it be signed by a gentleman on the second floor. So having explored various possibilities, we thought, well, the bulk of the bill is in good shape. We have property tax relief for homeowners. We have a circuit breaker. And we also have the bonding help for the schools. The transportation thing became the problem. And so there was a lot of concern. Is that really true? What's the story there? So it's an effort to find out what the issue was. We secured a copy of this letter to the governor from the Idaho Housing and Finance Association, and signed by Gerald M. Hunter, who's the president and executive director. So with your permission, Mr. President, I'd like to read that letter.
Having identified the source, Senator, you are free to read.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. So this was directed to the governor. This was where he first heard, apparently, that there was a problem. And then we began to hear issues floating around the Capitol building here as well. So Mr. Hunter writes, Dear Governor Little, I'm writing to summarize the impacts of the state's TECM financing program from House Bill 292. Certain H-292 changes to the TECM program's priority access to sales tax revenue will materially impact the credit structure originally designed to deliver the highest possible credit rating and produce the desired TECM funding amounts. Our financing team, bankers, and legal specialists expect H-292 changes to result in lower TECM program rating from national rating agencies and in a materially lower program borrowing capacity. In partnership with ITD, Idaho Transportation Department, obviously, we've had the second TECM transaction in the market right now this week, which is expected to provide up to $400 million of funding for a variety of transportation projects. And then he attached a list. We've had to pause this transaction due to House Bill 292. And if it becomes law as currently written, we will have to completely pull the deal from the market, have ratings reevaluated, modify security disclosure documents, and reintroduce the transaction at some later date. We would expect, all market conditions remaining constant, the interest cost of the reintroduced financing to be higher. Also, this condition presents potential litigation risk from bondholders of the first TECM transaction. To explain what that means, they've already issued a bunch of bonds based on the existing law, and now they're thinking that this bill could raise some issues in regards to those transactions. It goes on to say, quoting again, state statutes represent that the state will not take action to impair the credit position of existing bondholders. Our bond counsel believes the impact of H-292 will, in fact, result in an impairment and could lead to damage claims from bondholders of the first TECM transactions. Finally, it is appropriate to note that national rating agencies evaluate the stability of credit structures implemented through the legislative process. Material changes in these structures that impair credit worthiness does undermine the confidence in and ability to successfully employ these credit structures in the future. And then he concludes, sincerely, Gerald M. Hunter, President, Executive Director of the Idaho Housing and Finance Association. So that was the reliance, apparently, that the governor placed on vetoing, I should say the gentleman from the second floor, on vetoing because of the transportation issues. Now, when we became aware of that, again, we said, well, how are we going to deal with this? And the decision was made amongst folks here that we would look at taking out the TECM documentation, and that in turn was a factor that tied in with all the other factors, because that was a kind of a package deal as to the amount of dollars that would be taken from state funds. As you recall, there was some changes in the public financing, changes in the commonly known as a Wayfair account, which is the internet sales account. So all of that kind of looped together. So we looked at that, and then we'd heard for a couple of weeks that the governor, the gentleman on the second floor, might veto this bill 292 because of the date for the school funding. So there were several things that were in play there. That being the case, then, you see the bill that's before you now, which is the amended 198. You have received and have in front of you the statement of purpose and a fiscal note. So I'll walk through that briefly with you, and then I'll be open for any questions that you'd like to ask. So this legislation provides immediate and long-term property tax relief to all property taxpayers in Idaho. The first year of the bill will provide up to $355 million in property tax relief by using the unencumbered balance of the tax rebate fund. That's the $130 million that's left over that would have been paid out in income tax refunds, that those monies were not needed. Therefore, that $130 million is made available to us there. Plus, we have the $75 million that was originally promised by the gentleman on the second floor. And then the surplus eliminator, that's how we get to the $355 million. And so in the fiscal year 2024, now reading the second paragraph, and each year thereafter, we would have 3% of sales tax devoted to homeowner property tax relief, 3% devoted to school district facilities to offer property taxes, to offset property taxes and provide additional resources to schools for facilities, and the circuit breaker expanded to $400,000 for the value of the home, or 200% of the median assessed value, which allows more people to qualify for the circuit breaker. So as you look down the line there, you see the dollars that would be coming out potentially based on these changes and the general fund impact. So with that, Mr. President, debate is open.
Mr. President.
Senator. Is there further debate?
To debate the bill.
Senator Former, you have the floor to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a heavyweight bill, and I've been trying to keep up with it. I got the details this morning, and I agree we have to quickly move in order to preserve our position and try to engineer the best possible outcome. But I don't know about anybody else, but I feel like I'm a little bit behind the curve on this, and considering the importance of this bill, I find myself toying with my default position when I'm in a situation like this of voting no, which is not really what I want to do, because I recognize the work that's gone in. I like a lot of what I see in the bill. I have some lack of a complete understanding, I guess, on the bond issue. I'm not well schooled in that, and I kind of feel like I'm voting in the dark a little bit. I appreciate all the efforts that people have made to educate us on this, but I think we've gone beyond moving quickly, which again we need to do, but we're at the point where I think we're just going a little bit too quick. So regretfully, unless I can come up with a mechanism to give us a little more time, I'm kind of forced to vote no on it, but I'm pretty reluctant in doing that.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. President, to debate on the bill.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I almost feel like this is deja vu in some way from the session of 2021 with a certain bill that went through there, 389, and the method that was done with that. We had a bill that came through, and I served on Rev and Tax, and a bill came through that had substantial changes and consequences to taxes and taxpayers and the circuit breaker and all sorts of things, and it was all done in one day, and we had no time to digest what we were being given, to be able to talk to our constituents, to see how impact was going to transpire for our cities and counties. And I feel that I'm back in that same position again. I appreciate the efforts. It is definitely something that we need to be discussing, but we just got this and we've had no time to be able to digest it, to figure out how it's going to impact, to talk to our constituents, to be able to get any feedback or insight into how this is going to be handled. And I'm afraid that if we go through this path again, that we're going to end up with consequences, unintended or not, that are going to create problems. And so I really want to make sure that what we're doing is what is in the best interest of our constituents. And so I mean, this is several pages and I'm trying to absorb it, and I have had no time to be able to absorb the information that has been given to us. It's nice to have this little sheet, and I appreciate that as well, but still, I cannot by any way, shape, or form be able to go back to my constituents right at this moment, or to my cities and counties, and have them address how this is going to impact. I don't know if they like this, if it's going to have consequences that are going to impact them negatively or positively. I just don't know, because I just got it and I've had no time. 292, yes, that was vetoed, but it has a huge percentage. 90% passed it in the House, 91% passed it in the Senate.
Mr. President.
Senator Lee,
Mr. President, could we go at ease?
without objection, the Senate will go at ease.
Senators, while we're at ease, if you want to take a minute, I had a couple of requests for folks to spend a few minutes looking at this bill. This is the amendment that you saw previously in its totality, so you saw this previously, but let's just take a minute and look at this bill.
Idaho in Session is brought to you by Boise State University School of Public Service, the Association for Idaho Cities, Union Pacific Foundation, Idaho Cable Broadband Association, University of Idaho James A. and Louise McClure Center for Public Policy Research. Additional funding provided by Friends of Idaho Public Television Endowment. Idaho in Session is brought to you by Boise State University School of Public Service, the Association for Idaho Cities, Union Pacific Foundation, Idaho Cable Broadband Association, University of Idaho James A. and Louise McClure Center for Public Policy Research. Additional funding provided by Friends of Idaho Public Television Endowment.
The Senate will be in order. Prior to going at ease, the Senate was in the 13th order. Actually, we're in the 12th order of business on suspension, and we were debating House Bill 198 as amended in the Senate. Senator Nichols, you had the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the time allotted to be able to consult with the sponsor on this bill. I still would like to be able to talk with my cities and counties and constituents, but I will just make that statement for right now and allow the debate to go on, so thank you.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Den Hartog.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to speak to a couple of different issues on the bill, I really appreciate the work that's gone into this. I don't think anyone on this floor disagrees about how important property tax relief is to all of the people that we represent across the state. To speak to the bonding issue and why that might have been a problem, if you take a look at House Bill 292 on page 19, sub 15 there, and this is in that sales tax distribution. This is the order in which these percentages and these different amounts are coming out of our sales tax revenue before they ever reach the general fund. In 292, you see we added that new sub 15, and that put it ahead of and in priority over the TECM bonding funds that are in sub 16 there that you see were altered in 292. And I believe that's one of the reasons that we had the concerns brought up from the folks from Idaho Housing and Finance Association, who I believe are incredibly credible and trustworthy, and who have worked diligently with the state to make sure that this bonding program that we have for our transportation needs is run to its best and highest operation, that we get the best credit rating. So you see that change in the new bill on page 15. You see the existing TECM bonding there in sub 16, which is that 4.5% of sales tax, and then you see the new sections 18 and 19. This whole section of code is really a priority in those sales tax distributions that happen before these funds ever reach the general fund. And when we debated this issue on the TECM bonding program a couple of years ago, the ordering in that section was incredibly important. And we also had worked with the good folks at Idaho Housing and Finance Association to make sure that when they go to the bond market, that they have a guarantee from the state of the amounts to be repaid by the state. I really appreciate the work that's been done, and what I see in this piece of legislation is all of the many components that provided direct relief to the homeowners and property taxpayers of this state. And that's what we're here to debate. I know there's other things that are no longer in the bill that some of us may have liked, some of us may have not, but I would encourage your support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Is there further debate? Hearing none? Senator Groh, you're recognized to stand and close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate the comments that have been made and the debate that was added there. So the challenge you're having in looking at this amended 198 is that the changes are deletions, so you don't see them. They are gone. And what you do see is 298, 292, as it was originally written, except for the change from 2.25% to 3% for both the homeowner side and for the school side. So there is reinstatement of the public funds for the public defender. That's reinstated back in here. It was lined out before and it's back. So again, the internet sales that we looked at, that's not in here. The funding, the public funding for public defenders, that's not being taken out as it was before. And the TECM, which was in here, the changes, because that's at 4.5% of sales tax coming off the top. And it was originally showing 80 million for the state, and then the excess would all go to the local roads. And in 292, there was a cap put on the local roads. So it capped it at 60 million. That's what provided additional funding for the Wayfair Fund and some other things that were involved in that series of changes that were made. So all of those are gone. And what you have is the original intent of 292, which was helping the homeowners, helping the schools, and helping the circuit breaker. So all of those things are still intact. And in fact, the percentage, again, for the sales tax going to the homeowners and to the schools is now 3% instead of 2.25%. But since it's later in the priority, it was necessary to increase that percentage to make sure that we didn't lose money as we moved it down in the prioritization of who got money from sales tax. And with that, it was rounded up to the 3% for each side. And that's why you'll see some, actually a little more funding going both for homeowners, for property tax relief, and to the school. So with that, we hope, we appreciate your patience. We understand that when we're dealing with these things, these are technical. But if you think about the fact that you voted for 292, 292 is there, except the school date's gone. The TECM change is gone. The public defense amount was changed, and Wayfair is no longer in this particular bill. So with that, debate is closed.
The debate being closed, the question before the Senate is, shall House Bill number 198, as amended in the Senate, pass the Senate? The Secretary will call the roll.
Adams. Anthony. Berndt. Bierke. Burtonshaw.
Aye.
Carlson. Cook. Ten Hartog.
Aye.
Foreman. Groh.
Aye.
Guthrie. Harris. Hart. Hartkin. Herndon. Just.
Aye.
Lakey. Lee. Lenny. Lind. Nichols. Okonowitz. Rabi. Ricks. Ruchte. Schroeder. Samorov. Taylor.
Aye.
Taves. Trakel. Van Orden. Wardingle-King. Winder. Winthrop. Zeiderveld. Anthony. Bierke. Carlson.
Mr. President, 60 seconds.
You have 60 seconds, Senator, to explain your vote.
Yeah. Senators, this is kind of a frustrating process for me. My constituents need property tax relief, and I really liked House Bill 292. I will be voting yes, but feel that we did not have enough time to read the information, and I believe that this is a disservice to the people that we represent, but I am voting aye.
Senator Carlson votes yes.
Lenny,
Mr. President, 60 seconds.
Senator, you have 60 seconds to explain your vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. To echo that same sentiment from the senator from District 7, I don't like personally having a bill dropped in my lap that's 16 pages and being asked to vote on it right away. And the process I'm not too thrilled about. And me personally, I feel like this is a vote for the IEA, not the taxpayers. But I will very, very reluctantly be voting yes on it.
Senator Lenny votes yes.
Nichols, Treacle,
Senator Traco votes nay.
Winder, Satterveld,
Mr. President, 60 seconds.
You have 60 seconds to explain your vote.
I'm struggling with this too because whenever you make a decision in haste or if you don't read the fine print, there actually can be a word or a line or something in there that you didn't catch that could be at the cost of my constituents. And they do need a tax break, and I feel like we're hearing what the schools need and the bonds need and the transportation needs, but we're never really hearing about what the property owner needs. And I do want to fight for them, and I do want to do what's best for them. But at this time, with this happening so quickly, I have to say no.
Senator Zeiderfeld votes no. The roll call shows 32 in favor with 3 against, a majority having voted in the affirmative. House Bill number 198 is amended. The Senate has passed the Senate.